Hey everyone, Silver Contra here. Today I wanted to talk about some of the cards that I am playing in Magician's post links. And these are cards that don't really help me make link monsters. I have some cards for that, but I wanted really to talk about ways to play around link monsters and play the deck when I don't have access to a Gofu or some way to quickly make a Decode Talker. What do I use in the meantime to kind of make up for the fact that the old tried and true strategy of load up your extra deck, summon a bunch of cards from your extra deck, just isn't as viable or as consistent anymore. So I have 4 cards that I've been experimenting with, kind of on and off. 3 that I'm actually main decking, 1 that I'm really still exploring, haven't quite figured out where I want to put it yet. But I want to talk about each of them in turn. So there are kind of 3 ways to use turn your extra deck into something useful and turn your Pendulum Summon into something useful, even though you're not Pendulum Summoning 5 monsters from there anymore. So one thing that's important to remember is that you can still Pendulum Summon from your hand. I see, when the new link rules were announced, everyone was saying pendulums are dead. You can't do anything with pendulums anymore. Well, you can still pendulum summon as many cards as you want from your hand. And that's really important because there are still good cards to summon from your hand. Now, Mist Valley Apex Avian was kind of, it saw some decent play in the beginning of the Pendulum Magician life cycle, and then it was quickly phased out because the explosive power of the Perform Mages just blew everything out of the water. Pendulum Sorcerer and really pushed that strategy all the way to its breaking point where it became obtusely broken. But the idea of summoning Mist Valley Apex Avian, bouncing it back, summoning again, bouncing it back, is still an okay one. It's not great. It's certainly not even as good as it was before, but it's still an okay strategy, and I think we can extrapolate that to more cards that can work that way, that are in some cases even better. So in addition to Apex Avian, I have been running Fairy Tale Luna. So, of course, Luna, when you normal summon it, you can search for another copy of Luna, and not even necessarily Luna, and then you can Pendulum Summon the other copy. And then these cards, what they do, so with Luna, you can target a monster your opponent controls, and then they can either send a monster from their deck or extra deck to the graveyard that has the same name as the monster you're targeting, or let the effect go through. If it goes through, it bounces both monsters. If they send a monster, it just negates the effect. So if you have 2 of them, that means they've got to send 2 monsters. And there's a good chance they don't have 2 monsters to send. If you have 3 of them, then they have to send 3 monsters, and that just isn't possible. So, that is possible if they have a monster that's a name changer, but it's not going to come up often enough for you to care about it. So Luna is really cool, generic. You have 4 that you can throw into the deck, decent attack points, bounces cards. Again, you really want to set up a situation where you have at least 2 of them. That way, if your opponent, they go into their first Broad Bowl, you can go bounce, and they send their Broad Bowl, and you go bounce again, and then they don't have one to send if they're only running 2. Or if you can have 3 of them. I think 3 might be overkill, but it does help you see it early in the game. So both of these cards are really interesting, and every time we see a card that returns to the hand for some purpose, like something like a Magispector Unicorn Kirin, I think Pendulums, are the deck to abuse that. And I don't think we should be overlooking that, and we shouldn't be considering Pendulums are dead while this is still a viable option. Okay, so the other way we can get around the Pendulum rules is, of course, with Oath Dragon. And I think everybody kind of realizes this if you've been playing Magician Pendulums for any length of time, that Oath Dragon Magician's Pendulum effect that kind of allows you to bring things back into your hand. We're already using it with Harmonizing Magician, so I think really the deck needs to do is just play more Oath Dragons, and that helps. You bring cards back to the hand, you can Pendulum Summon more Magicians just with the help of Oath Dragon, putting things back into the hand, so that you don't have to use up your extra monster zone, and you can dedicate that to your Xyz monsters. So Oath Dragon's really good, and generally is a good scale and a good number. Lastly, there's another way we can use cards in our extra deck, and that is with Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon. So if we're loading up our extra deck and we're not Pendulum Summoning 5 cards from it every turn, why don't we put those cards to use in a different way? So you could use Zephyr Divine Strike, and you can use something like Odd Eyes Vortex Dragon to turn those cards into some form of advantage. And there's also a lot of talk that I've read about Vortex Dragon, whether or not it's really worth it or not. There's some new cards that help us get it. For example, there's a card that just came out in the last set that helps you fusion summon it. I haven't picked up copies of it myself. Again, this is probably the least tested card I've worked with so far. And I really like Vortex Dragon. I think it's a really cool card. I think it has really cool art, and I like having ultis of it. And I would love to play it more, and I think that now might be the time to really look into this card and start asking questions about it. Remember that you can actually get this off of Dragon's Mirror with a single Dragon Shrine, because you can send your odd eyes monster, your odd eyes dragon, plus of course a normal pendulum, which those are a dime a dozen. You can find them wherever, or excuse me, a normal dragon pendulum. Which is, of course, right here, Master Pendulum, the Draco Slayer. So you can send that first, then you can send your Odd Eyes Pendulum Dragon and then Dragon's Mirror into it. I don't know if that's really a strategy that I would follow exactly, but it certainly is an option. But in general, Vortex Dragon is really cool for the deck. It has that bounce effect, which is really nice. Good against, good against all the decks that are playing Link Monsters. Of course, it does get stopped by Decode Talker, but in turn, Vortex can negate Decode Talker, so that's kind of nice. And it shovels things back into the deck so you can search them out later, which is fine. I mean, right, if they're sitting in your extra deck anyways, might as well put them to use. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. That's about it for today, and I will see you next time.